I love it. I love the music as well. Very fitting. It's like a gangster party now.
That's it.
Rukshan, thank you so much for being here, coming all the way up from Melbourne. I know I speak on behalf of everybody here tonight when I say that I'm very grateful for it. Now, let's just get stuck straight into this. You were working, or still working, in a great business, doing well. You saw a situation occur in 2020 that basically awoke something inside of you that said something to the effect of, I need to get the story out there because it's not happening in other places. Can you please tell us a little bit about the initial thoughts that you had in relation to independent journalism, to putting your foot forward, and what led to you actually taking that step?
Yeah, sure. So I'm actually a wedding photographer. So if anyone's getting married in Queensland and you want to fly me up, please, you can hit me up as well for that. But that's true. I was a wedding photographer, and I still am a wedding photographer because I enjoy my business and I love the work that I do. But during that time of the so-called pandemic, a lot of people were taking up cooking classes and all sorts of stuff at home, watching YouTube videos, and I decided to take up independent journalism as something that I want to do. And I didn't think that would actually end up with me on the streets being pepper sprayed and the police visiting my house multiple times and all this kind of stuff. I was a bit innocent and a bit naive at the very initial part of that. But the more I actually started doing it, I realized it's actually very important that we have independent media, especially in a country like Australia, where we expect our existing media, in particular the ABC, the tax funder paid media, to actually do their jobs. But a lot of the times during that time, they were found wanting. And it's a shame, really. I still think it's disgusting that it took people like myself and other independent journalists to go out there on the streets and just talk to people and just let them tell Australians and tell the world what was happening to them at a personal level. So, the more I did that, the more I actually found myself amongst people in the crowds, the more I wanted to go out there and actually tell their story. And I know I've been judged. Some people enjoyed the work that I do. Some people judged me very harshly. I've felt that in my life because I'm not someone that's usually a troublemaker of any sort. That's not part of my upbringing. I'm not someone that confronts police. I'm not someone that wants to challenge police in the manner that I had to do. But there comes a point where you realize when the police come to your house at 10 at night with a letter from the assistant commissioner of police telling you that you can't, in Australia, in this free society, as a journalist, they're telling you to stay in your house because they don't want you to go outside, because they want to control everything that you see. When I saw those things happening, I was like, hell no, I'm going to keep going out, and I don't care what happens to me. So that's the short of it.
And thank you. And I have no doubt by your courageousness, you've inspired other people to do the same. Now, you made a social media post a couple of days ago that I read, and it was very heartfelt, Rukshan. You spoke about the initial response from people who were your friends or people from the local community when you were effectively documenting the events at the COVID protests. And you spoke in your post about how you were judged harshly and that you needed to really contemplate on some of the things people were saying. And where you ended up in the end was that you're going to do what you believe is right. Could you please expand a little bit on that for the audience?
Yeah, sure. So, in my community, especially in the Sri Lankan community, which is my heritage is from, a lot of people in professional backgrounds, a lot of my friends are in professional backgrounds. A lot of them are doctors. You would know there's probably a lot of South Asian doctors around Australia. So a lot of people that I'd grown up with reached out to me very privately, and they said, Rukshan, it's disgraceful what you're doing. You're bringing shame to your community, to your people, to your business. Like, this is going to impact your business, and it did. Because a lot of my clients for the weddings that I do are actually doctors. And I got all types of cancellations. I got all types of emails from venues. I got all types of emails from clients asking me about my vaccination status. It was I'd never experienced anything like that. And I found all of that offensive, of course. But, I realized then that you can't allow people around you, even your friends and people that you know, to dictate what you know is correct, to dictate your principles. And that's really what that post was about, because today, with the work that I'm doing, again, I'm experiencing something very similar, and it's got nothing to do with COVID. It's got some of the issues that Avi was talking about before. It's got to do with that. And it's very hard sometimes covering these issues because, that people are being impacted. So during COVID, of course, people were very scared. Some people were pro-vaccine, against vaccines, anti-vax, whatever. But it impacts people at that level. Even today on the streets, when I'm covering some of the issues that I cover, people are impacted, and it's devastating, horrific stuff. But there is still a place for people like myself, independent media, to go out there and do that job. And I think we have to move beyond these boxes that we put ourselves in. A lot of people are afraid to speak, and I found that being here right now, I'm a product of me speaking out, and that's what it's all about sometimes. Just actually saying what you truly feel, and it just empowers you and it changes your life. So I think, if I can give you one message to take away from my journey, is just speak and speak your mind and deal with the consequences. There's always going to be consequences, and you're not going to please everyone. No, not everyone is going to love you for what you do or say.
Hear, hear. Since your venture into independent journalism, what are some of the lessons you've learned along the way?
I think the biggest lesson I learned is when I started covering the pandemic protests, I was very neutral. I on purpose attempted to be unbiased and not really share my opinion and just let the camera speak for itself, let people speak for themselves. But throughout time, especially last couple of months with the Voice to Parliament, all this kind of stuff, I realized that we have an activist media class. The mainstream media is full of activists. The ABC is full of activists. Whether you like it or not, they're using all their equipment, all the reach that they have, all of that, plus their activism in a very sophisticated manner to tell people in this country how to think and how to vote and all these type of things that they're doing. They're doing that. So, unfortunately, I've also had to become an activist, independent media of some sorts. And I'm very open about my views. For instance, with The Voice, I was very open about it. And I think, we don't give credit to the lot of independent media that did a lot of hard work during The Voice in the background to challenge some of these mainstream narratives. There was a lot of work done on the ground by independent media to actually challenge some of these things, like whether it's 1 page or 18 pages, whatever it was, because besides maybe Sky News in this instance, a lot of the actual mainstream media was, they didn't want to cover this at all. So there is a place for that, and unfortunately, I think it takes opinions and a bit of activism sometimes to challenge this because that is what they're doing. And we have limited resources. I'm just working out of some people say my garage or my kitchen sometimes, but we have to take on these institutions because they are well-funded, they are well-resourced, and they will do and say whatever it takes to try to push their agendas through. And unfortunately, we have to sometimes play their game as well.
I agree with that. I'd like to ask you a question about conviction. You don't need to be doing what you're doing. You're a smart guy. You run a great business. Sometimes there's a cost to your work, as you've seen online. It could be from the detractors or people seeking to undermine your efforts. Yet what it appears to me is that there is something motivating you to continue forward. Could you talk about what that thing is?
Sure. My greatest motivation is my country, Australia.
Hear, hear.
I could get emotional, but I am a very proud Australian. I'm very grateful for what my parents have brought me to this country and the opportunities that I have in this country. So for me, it's very important to do what I can to protect some of that in my way. I might be wrong. I might not always be right, but I think there's a place if you love your country and you can contribute. Not everyone has to do this. No one should be judged for this. But if you can and if you want to, then you need to step up and you should. And that is where my conviction comes from, because I see this country going in a direction that I don't necessarily like myself personally. But also my conservative views don't agree with a lot of things which are happening in this country. So we have to fight for those views and values, because there's young people just like me, other people on TikTok and all sorts of stuff from universities and Antifa and the far left and all this kind of stuff. They're out there. They're out there spreading their message. They're out there spreading their hate many times. They're out there telling people, out there telling the younger generation to hate this country. How can I hate this country when it has done so much for me? So it is from that place that I find conviction to fight for these values of this country. And I feel like I've started to express that more often now, to tell people that a lot of the things I'm talking about, you might not like it, but it's from my Australian values. And it's a very hard discussion to have, particularly with immigrants in this country, because when you come to this country, when I came in the 90s with my parents as a young boy, we weren't taught to hate this country. We were taught to stand proudly and sing the national anthem. And we were taught about the history of this country. Today, the next generation of migrants and the younger people growing up, even the little kids who are the daughters and children of hardworking migrants, they're growing up being told that, this country sucks. And it's not true. It's not true. And we have to fight that narrative. And if the little things that I do might even just change one outcome for one thing, I think that's important. And that's where I get my conviction. And that's why I do what I do.
I love that. I've heard some people make remarks about our country, very, very derogatory. And sometimes it appears that the lines for some people can become blurred between government and country. And I've seen people give up hope. I've seen people not just leave our home state, Victoria, but the country of Australia, out of some type of belief they have that the damage done is beyond repair. So let me ask you in your words, Rukshan, why is Australia worth fighting for?
Look, it's a very hard question, Morgan. You put me on the spot. But look, Australia offers something like I see my cousins sometimes in Sri Lanka, and they wake up and they're looking of ways to get out of the country, to leave the country. Now, when I wake up in Australia, and I can say probably a lot of other young people and many other people in this country, we don't wake up in this country saying, how can we leave Australia for good? How can we find a better life somewhere else? You have to understand that there's a reason that these Western values, our history, all of these things that make Australia great is why so many people from around the world flock here, and there's a reason for that. And if we don't understand that reason, and if we let go of that, then it goes backwards, right? So I feel like, sorry, what was the initial part of your question?
Why is Australia worth fighting for?
Yeah, so that's why I feel like it's worth fighting for, because it is a beacon of hope. If you look around the world, all the distress and disaster you're seeing in many other places around the world, can you even imagine that happening in Australia? I mean, we saw an aspect of that 2-3 years ago. We saw how bad it could potentially get. But we live privileged, amazing lives in this country. And, there's challenges, of course, and we face these challenges in this country. But overall, this is an amazing country of 200-something years old in terms of modern Australian history. Of course, tens of thousands of years old with our Indigenous history, but still modern Australia is very young. And you're looking at countries around the world with histories of tens of thousands of years that still haven't figured out how to get along, right? So if we have all that here in this country, of course it's worth fighting for. Of course it's worth preserving. And the people that want to destroy that, and the people that tell you that this country sucks, quite frankly, I'm ready to fight them as long as I can.
Any final thoughts, feelings, remarks before we wrap it up? Just anything you want to leave the audience with?
Look, I think one thing I can impart on you guys is obviously there's a lot of independent media, there's a lot of content creators coming up. I think support people that you can support in some manner. It's very, you got the mainstream media, you got all their funding, you got all these people kind of helping them, globalists, whatever. But there is a space, I think, in this country for independent media. And it might not be me, it might not be Morgan, it might be the future generations that come after that. But I think it's very important to get behind it, because you're seeing in countries like the US and the UK that this new alternative independent media is having a massive impact on changing the dynamics of politics. And here, you're seeing it a little bit here, but it's not quite there yet, because there is such a massive mainstream, a hold by the mainstream media. So if we can, as individuals, change that, and it might not be through funding or donations, whatever, none of that, just by following people, sharing their work, and also understanding that people you follow, they're not always going to say on every single topic that you listen to them on, you're not going to agree with them on everything, but understand their character and understand where they're coming from. And, if anything, I'm always open about my views. And I think if people are willing to be open about their views as creators and you're watching them, just respect them for that. And yeah, get behind them, follow them.
Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Victoria's own Rukshan Fernando.